Balcones' first ever year-round bourbon was an inspiration. It all had to work together. A blend of carefully selected ingredients, Texas-sized pot stills, and creative people determined to find the absolute best way to usher a new whiskey along. When you discover how it pairs with a meaningful moment, suddenly the feeling of drinking great whiskey becomes a whole lot more.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat, spirited conversations with interesting people. I am your host, Kristopher Hart. Now, we'll keep this nice and short. Our only sponsor this episode is Balcones. I wanted to let you guys know, for those who can see, I'm holding up our first Rumble Cask Reserve that we did with Balcones. Just to give you a little backstory, last year I took a small crew of guys up to Waco to do a barrel pick of the first ever Rumble Cask Reserve from Waco, from Balcones. We picked out 3 different barrels, and this one, by the time you're watching this, is going to be already released at specs and probably sold out. There was only about 80 bottles. The next one drops tomorrow, and it's the Oloroso Sherry Barrel. It is a fantastic, shining example of greatness that is Rumble Cask Reserve. It's made from Texas wildflower honey, mission figs, and turbinado sugar. It is its own category. It's not whiskey, it's not rum, but it's like if all those things got together and made something perfect. It's not even, technically Brandy should be involved there too, since it's made with figs, but just a beautiful, beautiful spirit. This week I sit down with Steve Trevino. Steve Trevino is a longtime Texas born and bred comic headlining. There was really no need for him to come on my show. His whole weekend at the Houston Improv was pretty much sold out. His next stop back in Corpus is sold out. In fact, looking through his dates, I think the soonest thing that had any availability was in August in Waco. So, but I've always wanted to sit down with Steve ever since he did the interview with Bert Kreischer. He gave up Hollywood, came to Texas, bought almost 1,000 acres, 700 acres in New Braunfels, which is a very, very special place to me. Growing up, or when me and my wife first started dating, New Braunfels was all we could afford for a vacation. And that's where we went every year. And we still go back to San Antonio and New Braunfels, West Austin. That whole Texas Hill Country area is just so special to us. So hearing that a family man who's been able to make this whole thing work, being a comic on the road, but still have a family and have kids, is something that I can't help but just admire deeply. So it felt like a real honor to be able to sit down with him and just talk about everything that's going on. He's got a new podcast out he does with his wife called Steve Trevino and Captain Evil, the podcast. That's what he refers to his wife, Captain Evil. Check out his new special that dropped on Amazon Prime called Till Death. It is shot in San Antonio. He's about to shoot another one in Austin. I mean, the guy is just killing it when it comes to Texas comedy. Till Death, Amazon Prime, check it out. Find his dates at stevetrevino.com, and go see him. We're going to go see him tonight. My wife and I are going to sneak in the back. Without further ado, Steve Trevino. Cheers. Steve.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, man. Are we supposed to shake? I don't know if we're supposed to shake.
I don't know. I don't know. I've got some high-proof booze to.
That's what I was gonna say. If you've had whiskey on your hands all day, you should be
pretty safe,
fine.
Rona free. So, I've got a few things on the table. I know that you are a crown. You like a Crown on the Rocks guy.
I'm a rocks guy, and this might be. And don't get me wrong. Like I'll drink it neat, right?
Sure.
But I like when the ice gets a little slushy.
Sure.
So it gives it a little bit of water.
That swirls in the
swirls in the that's what, because sometimes you get the whiskey rock.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And my wife, I love her, but she was like, look what I bought. These rock, she's like, you never use them, because I do like it to melt.
Sure.
A little bit.
You like a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
You like a little bit of, take a little bit of the edge off, a little bit of the heat off.
But then the problem is, then it goes down like it's literally water.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't stop drinking it. Right.
That's the problem.
But I did find that the rye, to me, is just as good as the black or the more premium.
Sure.
But man, it's the same price as the regular Crown, but the Crown Rye just has that
I believe the Harvest Rye. Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah. So I think that one won Whiskey of the Year 3 years ago.
So good, right? Very smooth. And then you get, it's funny because I drink whiskey, and I see that you do too, right? And sometimes you get people that are like, I bought you a Crown Peach.
Right.
And I'm like, I could give a crap about your Crown.
Your
That's
flavored,
my wife.
sure.
Yeah, I don't do the flavored,
My wife one year bought me Knob Creek Maple. And I thought the same thing. It's like look,
if I drink
with it.
Yeah, if I drink for breakfast.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then that's a whole different discussion.
Like it tastes like if I'm gonna drink this with pancakes,
Sure.
And then God, and as much as I love our state, our country of Texas, it was such a bummer. The Mesquite Crown was such a mess.
Anytime you add mesquite to spirits, I'm good. I get the whole Texas thing is something that we're all proud of, but you don't have to pander to the stereotypes of what you think Texas is.
Right. Well, and it almost tasted like it didn't sit in a mesquite barrel. It tastes like when you put liquid smoke on something. Right, we're like, I get this kind of smoke, right?
Right, it's like banana flavored taffy. Doesn't taste like bananas, right? Well, I've got something to start with. So, and I kind of creeped you and your wife's Instagram pages, and let me explain myself here. I try to bring something special. I always look at these bottles as something that was a time capsule, something that was bottled at a time period when the world was a completely different place. So I looked for your anniversary, which I did some investigating.
Hard to find.
It's I know the date because she always posts. But I didn't know the year that threw me off.
Neither one of us really know. We do, but we don't because we got married by ourselves legally in the States in a church in Beverly Hills. And then we later on got married in front of our family in a church. So legally, we have that weird, which one's
the one you count?
Right.
Yeah. Did she make you celebrate both?
No, you know what, man? I think we mentioned earlier talking that once you have kids, it's like you get it, right?
Sure.
You know what I mean? You tell your wife, we're good.
Just send me a link.
Hey,
tell me what you want specifically.
We just bought a house. Can that count? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So no, look, I'm very lucky, and my wife is the type that's like, look what I bought. Look what you bought me. And she'll just go out and buy it herself. So it makes life for me a lot easier.
Yeah, your wife, for those who don't know yet, you guys started your own podcast together.
We did, man, and it was one of those things. I did a podcast years ago, and I call it The Process because I love comedy so much, and at that time, everybody was like, you got to have a podcast.
Sure.
You're a comedian. You got to have a podcast. And it was very inside baseball, and we just kind of moved on from it. And then I didn't enjoy doing it. And then all of a sudden, being on the road, constantly we'd like to get to know your wife more.
Sure.
And what is it like between you and your wife?
The rapport is fantastic.
Right. So we were like, all right, well, there's only one way to open that door, and it's to do a podcast. So the good news is that I don't need it to make money, and we just do it because we're enjoying having these conversations and talking. And I think relationship-wise, it actually helps us.
Sure.
Because we're so much more tame knowing that people are listening and watching, that we actually hear each other out.
Sure. You're trying to, yeah. It's kind of like when you are arguing in front of or not arguing, but you're going to marriage counseling.
Right.
You have to kind of play the game a little bit. You got to play the game a little bit.
My turn to talk, kind of a thing.
So I tried to find a wedding bottle because that's always been big in my marriage. Right. We bought a bottle for our marriage. But I couldn't, so I found your birthday bottle. This is a 1978 bottle of Wild Turkey 8101 that was actually exported to Italy and then brought back. Wow. So this is Wild Turkey back in the day.
Original label.
Wild Turkey back in the day was extremely underappreciated until now. Today's bourbon environment, people like to talk about, same thing with vintage watches or vintage cars. There was something special about it back then. Less mass produced. So the cork dissolved immediately, so I had to replace it. But this, and there's a dump glass here if you don't want to finish the whole thing.
Oh, well.
And
Timmy, you're driving home, buddy.
Yeah, Tim, you want some? No? Yeah? All right.
Wild Turkey's always been sweet.
Oh, it's so good.
It smells sweet.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be fancy with you. I'm going to take a nice little...
Well, and what's funny is in high school I would I probably shouldn't say this, but in high school I drink beer. Right,
Sure.
we'd go out and we'd go buy a case of Milwaukee's Best, and we'd drink 10.
Little time capsule there.
Yeah, that's good.
Tastes like a little bourbon. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
so
Feel that
smoky,
heat a
right?
little bit. Yeah.
A little hot.
That'll warm you up.
But I drink beer all the time, and I remember my dad was always the Crown drinker, right? And I'd be like, Dad, have a beer, and my dad would be like, I can't stomach it. I drink Crown. He goes, and by the way, you've peed 4 times
Sure.
drinking beer and he would sit there with his glass of Crown and his ice, and him and my uncle would actually finish. I'd watch them finish a bottle of Crown together, right?
Sure.
And then as I got older, I started drinking Crown and starting to really like it, and now I can't stomach a beer.
Oh, really?
I don't know how you are, but I can't. Timmy likes the IPAs. He'll be like, hey, man, let's have a beer. Or during the day, right? You don't want to really drink whiskey during the day on the boat, right?
Sure,
I'm not going to have my bottle.
You're going to be hot. Yeah. It's not a good thing.
Right.
Beer.
So, all right, I'll have a beer. Then, man, I drink a third of it, and I'm like, all right.
You good?
I'm done. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I moved away from beer to whiskey, mostly for a diet thing. I'm getting a little older. The kids, got 4 of my own, and I lost immediately 20 pounds moving away from beer into whiskey.
Yeah.
There's no fat, and I know people are tired of hearing me talk about this, but there's no fat, there's no sodium. The beautiful thing about distilled spirits is it's all zeros. No sugar, no carbs, nothing.
Well, and that was the thing that I learned too, is because I was like, well, maybe I need to be drinking vodka, right? Because
Sure.
Vodka. Everybody says,
it's the best thing for you, but no.
And then and then I started doing the research, and I'm like, wait a minute, whiskey is
exact same thing.
Is the same thing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's in fact, legally speaking, up until recently, vodka was defined as something without flavor or any noticeable characteristic because they literally burn the distillate until it's basically rubbing alcohol.
And then distill it, and then distill it, and then distill it, and then, right.
Whiskey here, you've got a lot of flavor even when it comes off the thing. So,
which is also funny to me when you hear, like, my wife, well, do you have Tito's? Do you have, and it's like, you can't tell the difference.
Sure.
Like, she doesn't realize that vodka is one of those that if I blindfolded her, she wouldn't know.
The one thing they do is they'll add glycerin sometimes, so to make you think it's more oily or viscous, but it's just added chemicals. Like, just drink whiskey and you're fine.
Exactly.
So where you got going next? I mean, you completely sold out the Houston Improv, and I know you've got going back to Corpus, I think, next weekend.
And look, I don't know if you're talking about it on the show, but with the Rona, I wanted to leave. I was never happy in LA. I just never was. And the only place that I was happy was the Comedy Store. And it got to the point where it's like, man, 90% of my life is not at the Comedy Store. I have a wife, I have a kid, and I can't live my life at a 90-10 percentage, So I moved back to Texas, and almost right on time, to where I am the comedian in Texas that, when Texas opened up, it was like, all right, man, let's go
hit the road.
Yeah, hit the road. And you got to be creative because, Corpus Christi, I usually do a theater there. That's not happening. So I called my friend at Brewster's Ice House. I said, hey, man, what do you got going on? And he goes, oh, my God, I'm so glad you called because I normally do concerts.
They're dying to get open, yeah.
And we can't, right? And we have to do seated shows. So let's do it. And I said, all right, let's do a Friday, Saturday. Boom. Those 2 sold out.
Immediately, yeah.
And we added 2 more. I think now we're at 6 shows.
Well, it's the first time I've ever seen a comic, at least here in Texas, you're doing 3 shows tomorrow at the Improv, the latest one being 11:45.
Yeah.
I was like, how are you not just exhausted at that point, man?
And I feel so lucky to do what I do, and I love being on stage. And as a matter of fact, being off because of the Rona for those 2 months, that's the first time in my life since I was 18 years old that I didn't go on stage at least once a week. I mean, for the past 20 years or whatever. So here I am getting ready to film a special, and I'm like, oh crap! Like I don't remember the act. I worked so hard to write these bits, and like you said, you saw Till Death. Yeah, that takes me a year and a half to perfect, and
sure,
tell the stories, find the order, and tweak it, and get it to a point where I can go, oh, here's a good piece of art, in my opinion, right, that I can put out there. And man, these past couple months, like, oh crap, like I got to get ready. I had to film August 3rd, and I'm not in rhythm. I'm not,
sure.
So for me, if I do 3 shows on a Saturday, that's awesome for me because then I get to tweak. Second show tweak, third show tweak, right? So then
find what works.
Right, and I love to work, period. Whether it's me cutting the grass or, projects, or I'm just a busy person. So, last night I did a show. Okay, first of all, woke up, did the podcast in Austin. I live in New Braunfels. Did the podcast at 10 a.m. in Austin. Came back. Timmy, my road manager, is waiting for me. We got in the car. We drove to Houston. We did one show last night. We drove to the Golden Nugget last night. Played craps till 5 in the morning. Turned around and volunteered at U.S. Vets.
This morning?
This morning at 11:30. And then now we're here with you. So
wow.
You
could probably use a drink at this point.
yeah. But it's how I like to live. And, for the Rona, man, it was, I've never dealt with depression.
Oh, you deal with it?
Yeah, man. I was depressed. I was I had an anxiety attack. And I didn't drink. And
it's probably safe if you're going through that at the time.
I have my family is a long history of alcoholism, so I always make sure that I'm aware of that, And I drink for a living, right? I drink at my shows and hanging out, and So during the Rona, man, we went to my ranch twice during the Rona on a Friday with a couple buddies and drank then. But I'm not and if I am an everyday drinker, I'm gonna drink wine.
Sure.
I'll open up an ice bottle. Duckhorn's my favorite. Duckhorn Merlot is my favorite. I'll open up a bottle of wine and have a glass or two. But, man, when I'm out partying, last night I'm at the craps table. It's like, hey, man,
sure.
Timmy, Crown on the Rocks, baby.
Sure.
Let's go.
Keep it going.
Yep.
So the story, you kind of mentioned it briefly, but this story, and listen, I know you're a busy man. I doubt you remember this, but you were on Bert Kreischer's podcast not too long ago, about 4 months ago. And that's when I reached out to you. I'm a Bert and Tom diehard fan.
Both those guys
for a long
man.
time. Speaking of being married, a little side story. Last time Tom was in town, he did the Prevention, and we met brought me backstage for a little whiskey tasting. I brought some World War II bottles, and we're just talking about his podcast and those whole things, or how that whole thing operates. And I asked him how. You've been doing this podcast 10 years. It's built his career up
it's massive.
Supported his career. A lot of his material for his specials have come from the podcast. Right. I said, how do you film when you and your wife are fighting?
Right.
Because how does that work? He goes. He said, "There's been days where we just stopped the episode, like where
that's not happening.
It just didn't feel right.
Right.
We were a little angry, so we went ahead and just let's stop recording, let's address it, let's talk about it,
and go back to it.
And then we'll do the show. And but I mean, you're talking about producing a weekly podcast for 10 years. Sometimes they used to do 2 episodes a week. It's got to be.
It's exhausting, man, and it's scary, and it is. It's one of those things where we're driving up there yesterday, and I'm like, what are we going to talk about?
Sure.
What are we going to, and then my wife's like, I don't know, we haven't talked, and then you get on there, and for me and her, we have such long history that we ended up, it'll be episode number 3, but we ended up spending the entire time talking about in-laws.
Sure.
Right? And that's something that I want my podcast, you listen to Tom and Christina, and they're just funny, and
sure.
they're
silly.
They're silly, and they and I love it, man. I absolutely love it. But I told my wife my favorite part about Tom's podcast is when they're just talking about themselves.
Awesome, yeah.
And they only do that for like a minute, right? And I'm like, I want to hear.
But you see their marriage,
right? I'm like, man, I want to hear more of that. So that's kind of what my podcast was hoping to do, is be that inside, baseball for our marriage, right? We had a miscarriage, and my wife
Recently?
was like. Last year.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
We're pregnant again.
Oh, awesome.
So we're very happy. We're 3.5 months pregnant now, and everything seems to be moving forward and low risk. But we had a miscarriage, and my wife's like, "Oh my God, what are we going to tell people? You are already talking about, And I said, "We're going to tell them that we had a miscarriage."
Sure. Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we bring in all aspects of our marriage, so that the average married person can go, "Holy crap, we dealt with that."
Well, I don't know if I said this on air, and that's why I try to prevent what I say before we record, because I don't remember if we talked about it on air, but I made my wife watch your special.
Oh, man,
that's awesome.
I
watched it at 5 a.m., and I loved it so much, and I also love the dynamic of a husband and wife. So I watched that special, then I watched your first episode, and then just the way that you guys, complete stranger to see that side of your marriage and then to see the connection. And you can even tell, I don't know how long you've been together, but it feels decades. It feels a long time. And then I think at one point you even mentioned you guys knew each other growing up at some point.
Yeah, knew each other growing up.
As a fan, especially as someone who's built this awesome career with the family. I mean, I think on your website it says America's favorite dad or something.
Yeah, favorite husband, yeah.
Favorite husband. Like, it's the best thing you could do is to do a podcast with your wife. I think it's a fantastic idea.
And what's funny is because, every once in a while, I'm very lucky that most of the people that follow me on socials and most of the people that find me, either they don't like me and they decide not to say something bad. But every once in a while, you get the, oh, God, this guy's talking about marriage. How hacky is that? And it's like, no, dude, I'm talking about my marriage.
Sure, my life, yeah.
My life and my stories with my wife. And it's almost, I fancy myself as a amateur therapist. I'm always reading psychology books, and I'm always in the psychology. And people don't realize that when I write a joke, I find out the psychology of it first.
Sure.
And I find out the emotion of it and the heart of it, and then I try to make that funny. I don't take something funny and go, oh, I have to add emotion.
Sure.
If I find something funny that doesn't have any emotion, then I get rid of it.
So you explained that in episode 1. And I'll go back to what I was saying about Bert in a second. But in your first episode with your wife of Steve Trevino and Captain Evil, the podcast, I kept conflating where the was in that. But you break down the process. You say exactly that. You find something that has to do with your life, find out the emotion, and then you make it funny. And I was listening to this, and it made me think of something that happened recently with my wife. We've been together almost 15 years, and we've got 4 kids. And throughout the years, I've always saved every vacation's hotel key card.
Oh, wow.
It's just,
something you do.
Just something you do, right? But not in any specific place.
You're that dad, right? Like,
yeah. Just
like when you're dead and you got grandkids and they're like, Dad saved all the stupid keys, that idiot.
There's no pictures of us in like West Texas. It's a Hyatt key card.
My dad was such a weirdo. He had all the keys from all our vacations.
But I didn't save them in any particular place. They're everywhere, right? So I was cleaning out my truck. We were getting the interior cleaned, and I found some old cards and decided I was going to finally throw them away.
Like, I got to do it.
So I put them in my pocket, and I think it was like 2 key cards. End of the day, I forget they're there. I take my clothes off in the bathroom, throw them on the floor. That's not my job.
Right.
And
not your lane.
Yeah, not my lane. They fall out. Didn't think anything of it. Didn't even notice. But my wife found them. And thinking of the emotion of this whole thing, she thought they were she was like, what are these cards from? Like, where have you been going to hotels? Who have you been going to hotels with?
Right.
I'm like, no, they're your hotel keys. She's like, we haven't been hotels in years.
And you're like, no, you don't understand.
Trying to explain the whole backstory of just the whole thing. I'm like, there are key cards. And then she says she believes me, but I see the look in her eyes.
Right.
And the whole time you were telling that process, that's all I was thinking about, because this happened like last week. And of course, she told all of her sisters jokingly, I found a bunch of key cards from Chris. I love the inside baseball. I love the dynamic between you and your wife. And what I was saying about Bert was that episode that you did with Bert is why I reached out to you. And I reached out to you a couple months ago and just said, hey, if you're ever in Houston, I'd love to sit down with you.
Absolutely.
Because you gave up the life, the struggle. So many people leave New York or leave their homes to go live in L.A. to make it. And you said, I'm out. This sucks. It's horrible. You end up buying 700 acres in Texas, move your whole family there, and you said, I'm at a point now that if I need to be somewhere, I can be somewhere.
I can be in LA, yeah.
Anywhere.
And for me too is I live a very normal life. I cut my own yard. I mean, I have very normal neighbors, and for me and my comedy, if I ever lose that, I think I'm done. And I want to make sure that I never lose touch with just being the everyday Texas guy, right? And a human, and I feel like LA takes you look at all these great comics, and there's a lot of them, and I don't want to name their names, but a lot of them
do the opposite. Name the bad ones.
Yeah, name the bad ones. But they have nothing to grab onto.
Sure.
They're super funny, but they don't have a wife, they don't have kids, they don't want to talk about having a girlfriend on stage because that'll keep them from they're cock blocking themselves, right?
Sure.
They get on stage and they're super, super funny, but they don't have much to talk about other than the industry.
Sure.
And I didn't want that to happen to me. And I wanted to go back home, and I wanted to live this very normal life, which I do. And Timmy and I were at Home Depot dressed like this, and people are like, "There's no way that Steve Trevino just walked by."
Sure.
Not at Home Depot, not in New Braunfels.
Sure.
And then we get to the point. There's a guy. What's his name? We call him Pollito. Where a fan of mine works at the Home Depot, and I'm there all the time because my wife has me doing all these projects. And again, I could hire somebody to do these projects, but I do them. It's just who I am, right? And every time I see Pollito, he's like, "Hey, dude. Hey, Steve." He's a little Mexican dude. "Hey, bro. Hey, dude, can I get a picture, bro?" Every time I see him,
Sure.
he has this like crummy like flip phone because he's 72 years old. He's got the little pencil. "Hey, dude, I got to tell people you were here, bro." And, we take the picture. But, yeah, I think Bert's at that point too, and Bert was, I don't think that he wanted, off the cast of us just talking, he was like, man, he's like, I'm just over this shit. I'm over this
exhausting.
crap, and it's exhausting, man. You're sitting in traffic for an hour and how much quality time do you get with your kids? And for me, when you think about the fact that you're only with your kids until they're 18, well, my kid's already 4.
Yeah, it's way
so
faster.
It's like, it's so fast. So I made the decision to move, and for me, I think it's been great. I've actually been more successful, more creative, and I think that I partnered with Texas Crew, which is a production company out of Boston, who is very legit, and they have Emmys on the walls.
I saw their Instagram, yeah.
Yeah, so if I want to do something, we do it. I don't have to wait for production, or I don't have to wait for an executive to tell me that it's a good idea. If we want to shoot it, we shoot it.
Sure.
So I've been more productive being in Texas. I've been happier, and Bert, I tell Bert, I'm like, I mean, don't get me wrong, man. I party. I was at the casino last night, but you have to remember how exhausting it must be to be the machine all the time.
Sure. All the time.
You got this guy who's almost 50, and it's like, okay, machine time.
I can almost withstand. Drinking every day I don't think is necessarily bad, but when you have like 3 or 4, like we had a couple of events last week where it was like 3 or 4 super late nights, too much to drink, and you wake up that third day and you're just exhausted. You're ready to be home, ready to be with the kids.
Right.
My life is nothing like what you guys do, but still, I get the concept of I'd rather just be home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, we were in. Every time I go to Vegas, I go to. We do one night at Hakkasan, right? And I rent like my own little booth at Hakkasan, and we go out, we get dressed up, we dance, and we listen to music. And I started thinking about like Tiesto and Ioki, right? These famous DJs. I'm like, dude, imagine having to do it at 1 a.m.
Sure.
Right? Like, all right, here we go.
Again.
I'm 50 years old. It's 1 a.m. Got to go on stage. Like, oh, my God, dude, imagine that life.
Every single day.
I mean, look, David Tell finally had to quit drinking because people were trying to kill him. After Insomniac, I mean, it was Jaeger,
sure.
And, I mean, they were trying to kill him. So, like, for me on stage, I don't drink on stage. And I tell the staff, if somebody offers me a drink, tell them no.
Sure.
Because it turns into a
thing.
I got him a drink. I'm gonna get him a drink,
Sure.
And then it turns into take it, drink it, and it's like, whoa, dude, like,
I got 3 shows tonight.
Right, I got 3 shows, right? So, what I love is the history and going so far back with Kreischer and Segura.
Oh, I love that guy. Yeah.
I mean, literally, man, me and Tom outside at the Improv in Hollywood, going, when's it our turn?
Yeah.
We're the funniest dudes here, and nobody cares. Nobody cares about us. And to be honest with you, if it wasn't for Joe Rogan seeing how great Tom was,
sure, and Bert,
yeah. It's like, where would those guys be?
Sure, Ari,
Ari Shafir,
Brendan.
and all the Brendan Schaub, and Bryan. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, Rogan's become the next Johnny Carson.
Yeah, the shepherd. Yeah,
right. You get on Rogan,
in that circle,
you got a career, right?
Have you ever been on the show?
No, we.
It's hard to keep up with. I mean, I try to watch at least one a week, but it's.
It's funny because I'll get fans that oh, come on, Joe, get Steve on or whatever, and I don't know if it's my association with Mencia, because I used to be Mencia's opening act.
Yeah. But didn't you guys part ways as well too?
A long time ago,
yeah.
Well, actually, right around when that happened, Mencia and I were already kind of splitting up, but.
Sure.
So I don't know why I haven't been on the show. You know,
Sure.
I don't have anything against Rogan. My name has come up several times on the show. You know, and I'd love to do it. You know, I think, but I also think that, you know, like I did Marin before Marin was Marin to talk about Mencia, and then that episode actually blew him up, and then I've never been on after that.
Sure.
And poor Mark, he's a very sweet guy, and he's super neurotic. And
Talk about a comeback story.
oh, dude, but Mark,
he was like the most hated comic of like 1995.
every time I see him,
and now he couldn't be a nicer guy.
Every time I see him, he's like, "Hey, Steve-O, buddy, I know I want to get you on. I want to get you on because you know you did me a solid." And I'm like, "All right, yeah, it's no big deal. Whenever, Mark, you know." But I think that you get so big that it's like, what are you going to take, Steve Trevino or Dr. Phil? You're going to take Steve Trevino or Bernie Sanders? Like,
sure.
You know, these guests.
Or Barack Obama.
Right. These guests that these guys now have access to.
Sure.
And I think that Rogan has gotten bigger in our society than just
a podcaster.
A podcaster.
Yeah, I
and
think
a
you
comedian.
called him with Johnny Carson. Yeah, it's a good. I think that's pretty. I know he gets compared to Howard quite a bit.
Oh no, it's Carson. It's Larry King. But that's what makes podcasting so great is that you know sometimes you watch the Rogan show and they're talking about pot for an hour, and then sometimes you watch it and you're going, holy crap, am I learning about astrophysics? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's happening? So there is no rhyme or reason for Joe, right?
I think that whole format, podcasting in general, that format appeals to the intellectual but also the human. TV has always been this thing where you have to be professional. You can't say this, you can't say that. Podcast now, you can have an hour of them talking about pot or doing DMT, or when Chris D'Elia tells a story on Rogan where he almost shit himself on his way to meet Eminem,
right,
and had to get his driver to pull over,
right,
and you can hear that story. And
but again, when you hear stuff like that, I had to have my driver pull over. It's like, oh really, D'Elia, you have a driver?
Well, I think it was like an Uber driver or something, but just you know, on his way there.
No, but yeah, it's the and what you know when I did Bert Kreischer's podcast, I got a lot of oh man, this guy's not funny, and it's like it's a podcast.
People said that about you?
Yeah, about on the podcast that I wasn't funny.
Sure.
And it's like, hey man, I'm not a comedian all the time.
Sure, I'm a human.
Yeah, I'm a human, and I like to talk, and Bert and I like to talk, and then, you know, I started speaking about, you know, me being Mexican American. I don't know if you saw the whole thing, but. And then you get these people that are like, "Oh my God, dude, get over it!" And and I'm like, "You're not even in the business, guy.
Sure.
You don't even know what's happening."
Well, and all you were doing was stating facts.
Well, that's what I tried to do, right?
Sure.
I tried to go, look, here are the facts. Here's the statistics of how this industry works, right? And if I don't make people aware, who will?
Sure.
Right. You know, so.
And now's the time to bring those things up.
Yeah,
honestly. Yeah,
really, right? But I get real insecure when it comes to podcasting, and I get real insecure about it because I am a weak person. I'm fragile, and one bad comment versus 50 great comments it crushes me.
I have a hard time with it too. Just having Bryan and Brendan on yesterday or last week, where the amount of activity go to the YouTube video,
right?
And the amount of comments are all just complete trashing of Brendan. And then sometimes I'll get sucked in there a little bit.
Right.
I complimented him on a watch. I got called a cuck. Like it was just I know that when you put yourself out there, you're going to get comments, good comments, bad comments. I've read through a lot of the comments on your video that you posted on YouTube because I even commented. I said, "Are you bringing your wife with you?"
Right.
Because I know you travel a lot, and I thought it would be really fun to sit them down because the dynamic between you two and your podcast was everything. It was fantastic.
And we hope we can continue that, and we have a great relationship, and I think that helps, right?
100%. And she laughed at even when you pushed buttons, you know, like you would overly address things, and you tell the story of where Captain Evil came from and the Bell's palsy thing, and
the blowjob was my favorite joke. But that's one of the things that I think that we have in our relationship is that I'm always trying to get her.
Sure.
Right? I'm always like don't set me up kind of a thing, right? And if she sets me up, I'm ready to get her, right?
Sure. No
matter how dirty it is, or, you know, we were in the car and I'm with my father-in-law and my mother-in-law. We're driving down the road and we're going to go to I think we're going to Florida or somewhere. We're on tour, you know. We're driving down the road and my father-in-law goes, you know, Mary, when she was younger, because she's a hairstylist. When she was younger, man, she would do two women at the same time. And I look in the rearview mirror, my wife just goes, like she knew it was coming.
Immediately.
And I go, yeah, when I was younger, I used to do two women at the same time too,
sure.
right, man? Right. And then, but it was so great that my wife was like, Dad, you just set him up.
Sure.
Like,
she knew it right away.
Right,
Yeah.
and we both enjoy it, because if she didn't enjoy it, she would have stopped me.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? She's like, oh, he's going to get him. Right? So I think that we have that mutual bond between each other in our relationship that I hope helps, right? But my thing with these people, these keyboard cowboys, if you will, right?
Sure.
Like, hey, man, if you don't like Brendan Schaub,
Stop following him. Stop
don't
watching
follow him.
Yes.
And you don't have to crap on him.
Sure.
The fact that you have so much time on your hands and so much energy and so much hate inside of you that you go, hey, this Steve Trevino guy, I'm going to let him know that he sucks.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, really? Who are you? Because most people I know go, hey, man, I'm not into Star Wars. I'm not going to get and shit on Star Wars guys.
Sure.
I'm just not into it. And I move on. I think Star Wars is dumb. I think it's a horrible movie.
Here it goes.
Right? But I don't get into it,
Sure.
right? I'm not going to be like, ooh, let me, and as a matter of fact, I can look at it and go, I see how people appreciate that.
Sure.
I see how.
Not my thing.
Right.
I get it.
But I get how somebody enjoys that.
Sure.
So for me, there's that frustration too, where it's like, really, dude, you watched my special, and then you were like, oh, thumbs down. Got to let people know that my opinion is the
Means
best.
something.
And it's like, dude, no, it doesn't. Move on.
I'm glad that, and I hope no one that works for Yelp listens to the show, but there is no, other than IMDb or down voting on a YouTube video, there is no forum people go to check specifically reviews for comedy specials. Right. I will say objectively, I think your special was genuinely just fantastic.
Thank you.
I really could not. I always get excited when I see, I'll be honest with you, I thought Louis C.K. came out with one this year that was you had to buy from his website, and I'm sorry, I thought it was objectively hilarious.
Right.
Dave Chappelle, his last special was just fantastic. Bill Burr's, Tom Segura's this one that just came out was fantastic.
Bill's one of those guys, for me at least, that we were both headlining Funny Bones, making no money at the same time. He's a little bit ahead of me in his career, so that's even more poignant to what I'm saying is the fact that here I am 10 years younger than him, and we're doing the same club. So if anybody struggled, it was Bill Burr. You know what I mean?
Yeah, early on, for sure.
But
he
I
found his
remember,
stride, though.
but you saw it.
Yeah.
You saw this guy that was funny, and you're like, oh, this guy's funny, and then all of a sudden he just went off the rails and found his voice, right? When he was like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lose my mind, right? And I love Bill. However, he did a joke on Conan that really rubbed me the wrong way.
Oh, really?
Really bothered me. But I'm not gonna not like Bill anymore.
Sure.
It's that joke I didn't like.
What was the joke?
He did a joke. He's like, I don't understand why we have to celebrate these vets, right? These veterans.
Sure.
Oh my God, they're veterans, and he's like, they get on the plane first, and don't forget to salute the vets, and blah blah. And he's like, do we have to salute all of them? He's like, one of the guys, I'm sure the guy that dropped the bomb on whatever, hey man, good job, we salute you. But the guy that's bringing him in, do we have to salute him? And it's like,
right, downplaying his role in the military.
Right, and for me, for several reasons. Number one, I love the vets. Number one, and that guy doing that is also in danger. And then number two, as somebody who works very hard and somebody who comes from humble beginnings, we have to realize that none of this happens for you guys unless somebody comes and cleans it up.
Sure.
From the janitor to our garbage. How much garbage would we have at our house if we didn't have a garbage man? And we have to, for me at least, we have to remember that just because he's a garbage man versus the scientist, they're both equally valuable to us. So that's why the joke rubbed me the wrong way.
Sure.
But doesn't mean that I'm not a Bill Burr fan.
Of course.
Right? Doesn't mean that I'm going to go, that's it, Bill.
I'm done.
Yeah, I got to write a review.
Sure.
You just move on. You go, all right, I didn't like that bit. Now, don't get me wrong. If Bill continues to do things, in my opinion, that I don't like, I'll completely move on.
Sure.
But I'm still not going to get on the internet.
And go out of your way,
right,
exhausting your energy. All right, so let me move on to the next drink real quick. I know I've got a couple more things before we go. This is a 1905.
Can I say this real quick? It was interesting that it seemed to have gotten a little more potent.
Oh, yeah?
As it opened up a little bit. Is that a thing?
So there is some thought process about it opening up. Once you pour it into the glass and it starts to get rid of some of the alcohol vapor that sits on top of the thing, it kind of opens up a bit. So there's some thought behind that.
Because it felt like that last sip I took had a little more bite.
A little bit more bite?
Yeah.
So I try to get little something special here. This specifically from 1905, so it's been in the bottle for 115 years.
Wow.
And yes, Bryan Callen, if you guys watch this week's episode with Adam Carolla on TFAT-K, yes, this is 115 years old. He had some doubt on old stuff here, but
Callen did?
Yeah, it's supposed to help with diarrhea, indigestion, and farts.
Oh, and farts.
Yeah.
My wife will be very happy that I'm taking this. But that's another thing. Like, what are you doing, dude? Fart jokes? Like, yeah, because they're funny.
Oh, they're funny. Always funny.
My son's 4.5, and me and him fart all the time and laugh.
Absolutely.
It's funny. That's what I love about Mike Myers on Inside the Actor Studio when they go, well, Mike, you do, on your movies, you do a lot of fart jokes. He goes, because they're funny. Because they're funny.
It's the simplest and oftentimes one of the first things people
So this is
laugh
a
at.
ginger.
Brandy. So it's not whiskey. It's got a lot of fresh ginger spice in it, and it's going to be thick and sweet. It actually recommends a wine glass full, but you couldn't handle a wine glass full of that. Yeah, you're going to have to go real light there on that spicy ginger.
It's interesting.
It's
Tim,
a really...
you should taste it.
It's medicinal.
Really interesting.
Yeah, it was made as medicine back in the day.
So was cocaine, buddy.
Yeah.
So you mind if I get that water?
Go ahead. Yeah. For you.
Takes that. Yeah. That's an interesting...
it's an interesting piece of history.
What? I thought...
I drank the whole thing. Hey, taste this.
It's good, right? It's interesting.
It's super sweet.
I mean, I don't think
tasty.
I'm having any more of it.
Sure.
but it's...
It's a little time capsule.
It definitely tastes like I feel like it would be on Tombstone, the movie Tombstone.
Oh, for sure. It's something that...
Oh, it's a little hop. They like...
What's his name?
White Earp.
Yeah. That cork was the original cork, and over the last 100 years, it's just kind of shriveled. That's another clue that it's real. Is the shape that cork is in is indicative of just a very, very long
and then
time.
people don't realize how we are lacking in cork.
Are we really?
Yeah. So
I know a lot of people switch to synthetics.
Synthetics, or even a nice wine bottle now is a twist off. It's no longer a cork specifically, right? And they say that the twist off actually seals the wine better.
Yeah.
Than the cork, because the cork, of course, is
100%. Yeah.
It seeps or whatever, right?
Yeah, especially over time. So that's usually also why you see a little bit of cloudiness there. That's also indicative of something that once this shrunk to a certain point, you're starting to get a little air in there, and alcohol is evaporating.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Which, by the way, like Callen, how great in shape does he look all the time?
Dude, he looked younger in person. I know he has a new nickname online as Rinks, because he's just covered in wrinkles. But the guy looked fantastic. We had dinner that night.
And he's what, 51, 52 or
52, something like that, 52. And what would you, 78, so 42, 43?
I'm 42, yeah.
Yeah, 42.
But I mean, you look at the guy, and he's freaking in
fantastic
great shape.
And his energy on stage is, if he's not doing cocaine, I don't know what he's doing. He's got that, what's the guy's name? Pablo Francisco energy. That
bung bung, quackity kickity, I'm on coke.
Just super high energy.
Yeah. But, it's I've known Pablo forever, and I think that people don't realize that as you mature as a comedian, you have all these people. I mean, I remember walking into the Addison Improv where I started, and Pablo Francisco was the first comedy club show I had ever seen.
Oh, really?
And I walk in there, and I literally was like, I can't do this.
Oh, you don't feel like you could fill his shoes?
I'm like, this guy's, he made everything up on the spot, and it's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, he's fantastic. He'll put
But
a
then
workout.
I went the next day, and it was the same act. I go, oh, it's a trick.
Oh,
he
I see.
made me believe that it was all on the
Improv.
cuff, improv, right? And then I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. And then we ended up on tour together, Pablo and I, and we've, we lost Freddie Soto, and we were on the Three Amigos tour together, and when we lost Freddie, me and Pablo got much closer.
Oh, sure.
And Pablo was like, I always thought I was the one that was going to die of overdose.
I've always, Pablo was one of the first stand-up specials. There was a...
Ouch? Was it Ouch or which
one? It was the one
that?
where he did the movie voice, In a World.
Sausage.
Yeah.
Chorizo.
He was one of those early, like for me growing up, Pablo Francisco, and then of course I see him every time he comes to Houston. It's just one of those things that he has been doing this for so long, like yourself, you decades of experience that you fit right into it. I mean, so I looked at your schedule; almost everything is sold out.
All the time.
I went all the way down to Waco. Speaking of which, this will be the last thing we taste.
Yeah. But again, remember. every special I've done, I've never been paid to do it. I make them myself.
Oh, really?
I produce them myself. I put my own money to produce these specials, and then I put them on. I sell them to Netflix, or this last one. There was no deal. I asked Amazon, hey, can you please air this? So they didn't pay me to put it on there. So this is all with word of mouth, with videos going viral, with people finding my special, right? Because if you go to Amazon, I'm not being promoted. I'm not, like sometimes you go to Netflix and they go, hey, here's Elijah Schlesinger, and here,
Sure.
here's all these comics you should see. So if you're the average person, you go, oh, maybe I should see that person, right?
Sure.
My specials have never been featured or whatever, So for me, it's been awesome that it has been very organic and very viral videos and people, catching on to me by
Grassroots, truly.
Grassroots. And so I'm really proud of that, And then again, you get these people that are like, well, dude, what are you complaining about? I'm not, because, okay, Hollywood doesn't want to buy my specials. I'll make it myself.
Sure.
I'm a do-it-myself guy anyway. I'm going to keep moving forward, and I'm going to keep finding ways to succeed no matter what.
Well, you've figured it out. I mean, looking at your schedule, you've got Corpus next week. I think you're going back to Dallas before you go to Waco in August.
I'm doing El Paso.
El Paso
then,
after Corpus, right? Or El Paso's next?
No, it's Corpus, El Paso, and then I think I have a week off. Then it's 4th of July, and then we have Tampa, right?
That was a great story too.
Which one?
You and Bert in Miami,
dude. That was one of the, and it's one of those
Bert
things
Kreischer.
too where you don't think, like, I remember touring with headliners are like working the door at the Addison Improv and
that's where you get your start
Yeah.
too, bringing them to interviews like this, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But I would be there and for example, Dave Chappelle came through, right? Chappelle comes through, Neil Brennan is with him,
Fantastic guy.
right?
Yeah.
And they're writing Chappelle Show. And they were just writing sketches, right? And it was one of those things, I'm like, oh my gosh, the coolest thing ever.
Sure.
I get to see Chappelle. And nobody knew who Neil Brennan was. He's just a white kid, right?
Wait, they were at the comedy club.
Chappelle was at the Improv.
Sure.
And he brought Neil Brennan with him because they were writing sketches together. Because they wrote Half Baked together.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, they ended up taking those sketches to Chappelle Show.
Yeah, the Chappelle Show is fantastic.
But I just remember thinking like, oh, this is a moment, right? This is so cool for me to get to see. And then I think the Bert Kreischer and me together in Miami was a moment.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it was like, oh, man, here's these two young guys partying and having a great time and doing their thing, not realizing that, oh, crap, 15 years later, we're both selling tickets all over the country.
Selling out tickets, yeah.
I mean, well, Bert sells, he's on a whole nother level. But tell me about this one.
All right, so I know we're running out of time. This is a Rumble Cask Reserve. It's made from Balcones, the oldest distillery. And, well, they came out with their first whiskey produced in the state.
Let me stop you there.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there a tariff that only Canada could make whiskey?
Okay, so what you're thinking of, the North American trade, was it NAFTA? What is that? North American Free Trade Agreement?
Yeah.
That agreement is with North America in regards to certain territorial names, like Tennessee whiskey has to be made this way.
Correct.
Which means if you make whiskey in Canada, you can't call it Tennessee whiskey and it be sold in the U.S. or like it's an agreement to respect boundaries.
Right.
Same thing with Canadian whiskey. It's got to come from Canada. Yeah. Bourbon, that whole thing, you can make it anywhere in the U.S. But in Texas, this was just about 12, 14 years ago, something like that.
Don't they do a Scotch too?
Who does?
Balcones?
Yeah, they do a single malt. Yeah.
Single malt,
They don't
right?
call it a Scotch because it has to come from Scotland. Different agreement.
Right.
But they do single malt. This is made from mission figs, turbinado sugar, and honey.
Wow.
It's probably the most expensive thing they make for them to make from the raw ingredients. Now, it's high proof, though.
Ooh.
Yeah, I meant to warn you. Apologies. It's 61% and change. Comes out this weekend. It's actually made for the show.
Wow.
So you can actually pick it up, 61.3%.
Holy moly.
Takes some getting used to that high proof, but
it's very good.
With an ice cube, like the way you like it, it's brilliant.
Perfect.
It's brilliant. All right, so
I'm gonna have to get a bottle of this, man, because it just looks cool, and I'm such a diehard Texan, and
when you're there,
go
by in Waco. You're playing Waco beginning of August. Go by Balcones.
Yeah.
They have something like, I mean, they got thousands of barrels just to walk to their rick house, have them roll up,
Yeah.
taste something straight from the barrel. It's one of the best experiences.
I'm gonna have to do
ever.
it. I'm surprised Chip and Joanna Gaines haven't got a hold of this thing and turned it into theirs. Dude, Waco's come a long way.
Waco has come a long way. The guy that actually, the head distiller from Balcones, looks like David Koresh. I mean, he's
Really?
He's got one dread,
Dude,
a
so
beard. He rolls his own cigarettes. Like the guy.
The wife and I are we're driving to Dallas, so the wife's like, "Oh, take me to Magnolia, right? The deal." So we roll up, and there's no way that we're getting in there. I mean, I don't know if you've taken the wife there, but it's a freaking madhouse, right?
Oh, is it really?
Oh, I mean, people flagging you in. It's a Tuesday, by the way, and they're like, I mean, it's nuts.
Wow.
So I told Renee, I said, "Hey, find somewhere else that we can eat somewhere nice, right?" And she's like, "Oh my God, this has like farm to table, like, you know, the reviews are high, blah blah blah." So we roll in, and right away, man, I'm very observant, and I'm like, "We're at a cult, right? Like all the girls are wearing the,
Sure,
yeah, right." And
I grew up Pentecostal in Texas.
Yeah,
I'm familiar.
So Renee's like, their uniforms were cool, right? Like they had this whole like
she thought it was like a Renaissance festival.
pilgrim thing going on. And I'm like, "Honey, you know why the food was so good?" She goes, "Why?" I go, "Because it was made with virgin tears."
It was 100%.
That's why.
Psychopath cult.
So then we Google it, and it's a freaking cult. Like 60 Minutes did a thing on it, like, and then Renee's mad because she's like, "Wait a minute, Chip and Joanna recommended this place on Yelp." Like,
she's a big Chip and Joanna fan.
oh yeah, she loves those guys, man.
Sure.
I have to figure out a way somehow for my wife to meet them.
Sure.
Because I always feel sorry for Chip. I just want to hug him. Like I know what it's like, man. I talk about it in my act because my wife, we're flipping a house right now, and my wife's like, "I can do what she does." I'm like, "Well, she doesn't do anything but tell her husband what to do.
Sure.
You sure as hell can do that." I go, "Who gets screwed in that show? Chip. It's always Joanna rolling up in the Suburban and the AC. Let's go check on Chip," and he always comes out all screwed up, right?
Because he's been working.
Yeah. How was your day, Chip? Well, I don't know. The ceiling fell on me. How was your day today? You know.
The air conditioning stopped working.
Right. And the poor Mexicans in the back, they got to blur their faces out.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming
Thanks
on.
for
I know
having
you've
me.
got a little bit. Are tickets still available for the Sunday show? Other than that, it's sold out. Go to the Houston Improv and get tickets to see Steve. Thanks so much for coming on.
This was fun, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Cheers.
Balcones' first ever year-round bourbon was an inspiration. It all had to work together. A blend of carefully selected ingredients, Texas-sized pot stills, and creative people determined to find the absolute best way to usher a new whiskey along. When you discover how it pairs with a meaningful moment, suddenly the feeling of drinking great whiskey becomes a whole lot more.